So yeah, my name is William Bakker. Like Aaron said, I'm the Chief Strategist at Destination Think. So this is the biggest learning that I've had so far at the conference. I think it will work really, really well. And if your CEO doesn't want to, then just put your favorite politician on the cover. Now, another big learning that I had is that we're all pretty international, and even in the US, we all have a lot of different accents. And, you know, we can play the accent game again with me. But I think we'll never be able to beat Heidi. I think she wins hands down. With Kieran at a close second. I also have learned that we're actually plumbers. Which my wife will think is ironic, because back home, I have absolutely no clue. But maybe we're not plumbers, maybe we're actually cat herders. I think that's probably a more appropriate description, right? Yeah. Okay, so we'll get into the real learnings now. So the first thing is to be strategic, measure, learn, and adjust. And Dan from San Francisco, you know, that's where he started with, right? Even, you know, he's a department of one, he still has a strategy for social. And that is so important, because without a strategy, you're just doing a bunch of random things and nobody really knows where it's going to lead to. Tactics are important. Understanding what the right way of managing your channels is, the right way of integration is important, but you need to know where you're going and how you're going to get there. So first you need to know where you are. So it's best to first start with benchmarks, and this came up a few times. And I think we actually have a benchmarking tool that we developed. So when we work with a client, we go into their destination, and in their organization, we talk to everybody, and then we have a system where we rate all the activities within the destination on a scale from 1 to 5, every department and every activity, so that you know where you are, where your starting points are, where your areas for improvement are, and you can use that to build a roadmap moving forward. Set up the right corporate KPIs. This, you know, you might even not remember this. It was like the first presentation, right, from Skift. And C said it well. I'm just going to turn around so I can remember exactly what she said. Benchmark needs to be adjusted accordingly to set realistic goals. But a really important one was tourism boards, DMOs, and CVBs are different levels of maturity on social. And that's okay. So don't try to leapfrog. What we've learned, we've made some mistakes in our consultancy, although, you know, as a consultant, you don't like to admit that, right? Because you always have to know all the answers. Well, it's a shared journey. So 5 years ago, when we started, we went into one of our clients, and we created a kick-ass strategy, but the client was just, you know, had so far to go that it was like a leap for them, and the whole organization just turned into turmoil. So now what we do is, through our assessment, we say, okay, well, you're at level 2. Next year, let's try to get to level 3. And then maybe next year we go to level 4. Or maybe next year we go to a different department and we move them forward. And bit by bit, we'll get you to where you need to be. But you need to take your time. So some great tweets to accompany this point. So clear and measurable objectives as well. And that's what I like about Heidi, right? Heidi has a very, very clear objective. She wants repeat business. That's the one thing that she measures, and that's the one thing that she evaluates, because she also knows if people come back, they're probably also going to tell their friends that they like it. So I actually think it's a very, very smart objective, and it's really, really gives you a lot of focus. Measure, learn, and adjust. We saw some great examples. I really enjoyed Caroline's presentation yesterday from Philadelphia. Her and her team doing some great stuff. And she wasn't afraid to share some of the stuff that didn't go so well. But the point was that she really uses the learning of the things that don't go well to adjust her tactics to improve. And she had this great chart where she plotted how many page view a blog post got and how many time people would spend on that post, so that you could see, what type of categories do we get a lot of traffic for, what type of categories are really engaging, and which ones aren't, and what can the reason be, and what do we need to do? Do we need to drop these categories? Do we need to improve on them? That's the kind of insights that you need in order to move forward. So measure, learn, and adjust. And the KLM, of course, they had some completely different mistakes that they've made, sort of at a corporate level. And he kind of touched on this little tweet that they did. That actually, anybody never explained it, but I'll tell you, because I'm actually Dutch. You can stop playing the accent game. So I know KLM quite well. So what they did on the World Cup, when Holland eliminated Mexico, they sent out this tweet, departures with like the little Mexican guy there, which of course, is not exactly appropriate. But Dutch people don't know that. They don't have a clue, trust me. So this blew up, became a big controversy, and KLM was, really? That's bad? Yes, it is bad. You can't do that. So that's how you learn, right? It was innocent, but you can't do that. They apologized. But I like that they take that, they're not afraid to make those mistakes on a corporate level. And I think as a DMO, we're often too scared that a newspaper is going to write a bad story, a politician is going to get mad. And it takes real leadership, the leadership that Heidi displayed, to sort of protect the organization from that kind of stuff in order to tell those people, listen, yes, we make mistakes, but guess what? We learn from them, and if we wouldn't make those mistakes, there's no way we wouldn't be able to move forward. Too risk-averse leads to, marketing on balloons for the rest of your lives. You got that, didn't you? Right? Okay, good. So Jordan here, he summed it up really well. Companies make mistakes. What you deal with, what you do about it, that's what matters. Okay, so that was the first one. Second one, create your brand story. I really enjoyed the presentation from Nashville, and even I enjoy the city even more, but you can really see how what they've done years ago, and it took years, but you heard where they came from. You've heard where they want to be and where they are, but you see it on the ground as well, and that's what makes it so awesome. So from Jochem, he had a great quote by Jeff Bezos. Your brand is what people say about you when you're not in the room, and that's so true, because really a brand is individual. I'm from Amsterdam, so if I would tell you I'm from Amsterdam and I ask you about Amsterdam, you would all have similar reactions about certain aspects of Amsterdam, but it would all be a little different if I asked you what's a tourism experience like in Amsterdam. You would all give a little bit of a different story, because a brand is really personal, and it's really based on everything that you've heard about it from different people, from different sources, or the experience that you've had on the ground. So it's really personal. And as a DMO, you do not define your brands. Your visitors define what your brand is. So talk about brand as a story, right? So storytelling. So as a DMO, what is a destination? Well, destination is really the stage where stories take place. And what's the visitor? Well, the visitor is really the lead character. So if you provide the stage, the lead character, enters the stage and, experiences the story that your destination provides. And the products that people experience, that's really the scenes in the story, right? So you go, we went, you're all here, that's a scene in the story. And then you go to the hotel, that's another scene. The bus ride is a scene. And then we went to watch some great music on Wednesday. That was a scene. Restaurants. And all these scenes together make up our own individual story. And that's why our individual brand perception is different. But the people that you interact with on the ground, they're sort of the supporting cast. And Disney, that's why I'm using the Disney analogy. Disney actually doesn't call their staff, they call them cast members, because Disney understands all we're doing is telling stories. Disneyland is one big story. And the experiences that you have, that really forms your individual plot. And the experience can be positive, and experience can be negative, and it can be designed or it can be accidental. You know, it can be in control of you as a DMO or as industry, or outside of control. The weather is an experience that you can't control, but it's still a big factor. Me and Aaron went to the Titans game on Monday. It was really cool. It was also freezing. People ask me, hey, how was the NFL game? Oh, it was awesome. Man, it was cold. There's nothing you can do about that as a DMO. And trust me, I'm from Canada. I know all about it. I live in Canada. I'm from the Netherlands. So this whole story that's being told in your destination, of course, this is what's important. It's now told in social media. It's always been told through word of mouth, but now it's told in social media. So why am I saying this when we were talking about brand? When you're thinking about a brand, you really need to think about what's the story that I am telling as the destination, or what are the different stories that I'm telling as a destination? Because that's your brand. So don't think about your brand as, you know, your logo, or you know, an emotional statement. No, it's actually the stuff that happens on the ground, because the stuff that happens on the ground build brand. The experiences that I had in Nashville is my new perception of Nashville. When I go home, I tell my wife, hey, guess what? You said you didn't like Nashville because it's all country music and you don't like it. You were actually wrong, because it's not just country music, it's all music, and it's awesome. She probably thinks different about Nashville tomorrow. And nothing the Tourism Bureau can do about it, although they have done a lot. So you need to be very, very clear. So this is from SoMeT in Europe this spring. So this is Sven from Iceland. And what I really, really liked, there was a lot about Sven's presentation that I really, really liked, but this part I like the most, because this is Iceland's brand story. You can't read it. It says, Iceland, first sentence, it's not for everyone. The first DMO on the planet that has the guts to say, hey, maybe we are not for you. How many destinations have slogans like, a little bit of everything, endless experiences? We have something for family, we have something for old people, young people, hipsters, foodies, right? You need to make a stand. You need to say, this is what we are. This is what we focus on. And Iceland actually had the guts to say, you know what? If you're not like this, maybe look for something else. Because they also know if the wrong people show up, they hate it, they're going to tell everybody. And that's part of it. I asked them. So very, very clear and a laser focus. And that's what Nashville has done, and that's why it's so great to be here in Nashville, because it's a perfect example. It's the best example that I've seen. I've traveled to many places, and I've seen some gimmicky stuff. The conference in Europe was in Rovaniemi, and it's on the Arctic Circle in Finland. And that's when we were still doing the voting, and that's probably one of the reasons why we're not doing the voting anymore, because then you end up at the Arctic Circle, which is hard to get to. But I'm glad we went. So Rovaniemi has adopted, has branded themselves as the home of Santa Claus. There's actually a Santa Claus theme park and you know, Santa Hotel, Reindeer Hotel, and what have you. The whole town is bought in. Like, I took a taxi ride from the airport to the Santa Claus Hotel, and I asked the guy, so what's with the Santa Claus stuff? He's like, oh, did you see that industrial park over there? That's where the elves work right now. They're packing the gifts. My wife, she is an elf. Elf school is over there. I'm like, no, man, it's a trucking company. The whole town is bought in. I took a snowmobile tour, and it was this cold there, right? So this guy, he's like a rough guy, the tour guide, and every 20 minutes we had to stop because the guy had to have a smoke. So one of the smoke breaks, I go, so what's with this Santa stuff? He's like, oh yeah, my wife is an elf, and but I saw some tweets from another Santa town this week, where that's where all the mail goes. Yeah, it's different from, so it's different where Santa lives. The mail goes to you. Okay. You're an elf too. Okay, you need to go to Rovaniemi. Where am I? I'm having Heidi flashbacks. Okay. Heidi said it. Find your story, tell the world. You know, and pick the one thing that you're good at and own it, right? And that's what we do with a lot of our clients. Sure, if you're New York, you're not one thing, but a lot of smaller DMOs, you need to lead with what you can own. And then you need to have the leadership to go to your industry and say, listen, we're leading with this, but it doesn't mean that you're left out. Rising tide lifts all boats. You know, there is a youth science center here in Nashville. You know, this is Music City. If I bring my family here, that's where we'll end up. But we're coming here for the music. But we'll do other stuff too. Now, this is a really, really important bit, right? Because you can say, okay, well, what can we own? And we focus on it. But of course, you also want your brand to be what your destination aspires to be. So this is very insightful, Jacob. How do you do that? Because, you know, you don't want to overpromise, right? So that leads us to the next point, which is deliver a remarkable destination experience. And if the expectation that somebody has doesn't meet the reality on the ground, then you're going to have a problem, right? And that's the problem with marketing or traditional advertising, you know? And I think remember the Microsoft Zune? No matter how much advertising they threw at that thing, nobody bought it, right? Because the experience wasn't great. So the same thing with destinations. We're really, really good at hiring photographers that make breathtaking shots, creating these highly emotional videos that make you, you know, get goosebumps and tear up. But then if the reality on the ground doesn't match it, then there is a problem. But it doesn't mean that you can't aspire to be something. So you need to manage the expectations and make sure they're reality. And then you need to manage the stories on the ground. Now, this is where destination marketing becomes destination management. And that's the future M of the DMO. You need to manage the story on the ground because the story is told in social media, and that's how your brand is built. No matter how much Zune advertising you throw at it, people will still buy an iPod because the experience is superior. Maybe even it's not, but all their friends say it is, right? And that's what's important. So this is sort of, you know, a not unusual scene when you arrive at a destination airport, right? The first impression of a destination. Long lineups for customs or security, baggage claims. It's not unusual. As a DMO, there's not much you can do about it, but you can definitely work with your airport to improve it, right? You can try to do something. Disney has long lineups. People don't mind, necessarily. So what you need to do is you need to really take a look at your destination through the eyes of your visitor and identify the things that could be potential problems and then mitigate them. So there's a few novel things that some destinations have done with their bad airport experience. Heathrow, which is a terrible airport. You know, I would pay more to transfer to another airport, to be honest. They put some pianos in some of these places. So now, you know, if people are waiting and, you know, like one person jumps behind a piano and at least, you know, there's some music. You're still standing there in line, but at least, you know, there's something happening. It's organic. It's as long as the person knows what they're doing. Because I've also seen 2-year-olds play and they don't know what they're doing. Fiji took it one step further, and when you arrive, there's actually a little band waiting for you. You know, you come off the plane, and there's the band, Fiji music, the first impression. So I'm really using this to sort of illustrate that you need to sort of think about this customer journey, just like KLM does. They think about the customer journey from your first contact online till you return back to where you came from, and they map it all out. They measure it, they monitor it, they identify touch points, they identify where things go well, where things go wrong, and how they can improve every single step of the way. And that's what you need to do as a destination. You can't stop at marketing, inspiration, providing people information, and then, as soon as they booked, sure, we have a visitor center, pick up a brochure, we're done. No, you need to manage things on the ground. Now, that process is called service design. It's actually one of the reasons why we changed our name from Think Social Media to Destination Think, because this is an area that we've become active in, because we really, really believe that managing this destination experience is sort of the heart and soul of your destination marketing, because that's where the conversation starts, and that's what you need to do. And so we've acquired a lot of skill sets in this area in order to create brands that are built on, social, so a lot of social research, but also have specific methodologies to go in a destination on the ground, do specific research to identify and map out the destination experience, and then work with DMO and industry to make improvements. So learn more about service design. It's going to be really, really important in your job, even if you're managing social media. Now, and I think that Nashville, again, is sort of a really, really great example. And just the little signs, and it's one illustration of how they are thinking about the experience on the ground. They have a radio show, the music in the airport, there are guitars in the airport, the hotel that well, they were all staying in probably, the photos in your room, what would Dolly do? Everything fits, and it's beautiful, and I love it. So back to Disney, and another brand definition. Michael Eisner, the ex-CEO of Disney, said, and I have to read it, a brand is a living entity, and it's enriched and undermined cumulatively over time the product of 1,000 small gestures. And that's really what it is, right? And these 1,000 small gestures, they start in social media through the awesome stuff that you do, and then it moves on the ground, and and that's ultimately, when people walk away, that's the brand perception that they have, and that's what they're going to share. Lauren, who was one of my favorite SoMeT tweeters of this week, she said it well, little stories can have an impact. Fourth lesson, target niche audiences. So I'm actually going back a couple of years now to El Paso, who was in El Paso? Yeah, remember Flanders presentation? Talk about cool accents. They talked about how their whole marketing approach is around niches. So these are the niches for Flanders. Flanders is the Dutch-speaking part of Belgium. So they have art cities, Belgian beer, fashion, and that's what they have identified as their brand stories. But then they find niche audiences to match it, because you can be, you can own something, you can own food, or you can own wine, or you can own surfing, but then you need to find the right audience to engage with. Stop broadcasting to everybody, find the people that will love you. And that's what Flanders does. Ireland, they have a great niche audience. This is obviously not their own audience, but they saw an opportunity and they thought, hey, Games of Thrones fans, here's an opportunity for us. I didn't know it was filmed in Northern Ireland until I saw Kieran's presentation. I'm like, oh, really? That's something I might have to check out. New Zealand, I was in Australia last year, and they had a great presentation about what they're doing with The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings. And it's become a really, really big niche for them. People who are Lord of the Rings, Tolkien, and Hobbit fans, and they're doing a really, really good job. Go to their website and check out what they're doing with The Hobbit. But they're also doing some really, really cool marketing. So what I'm going to show you now is what they did as a PR stunt on a TV show.
Here we are. We're going to bring, for the first time in the history of the world, the weather forecast in Elvish. Ta amati.
Hellan vain ennor, si abgen edregol, ani lair ovol. Linaurui urui vi obeli feriain, amenni luin, iastaer a thirari dran. Thiarbain indur, a hastvaera randirat. O girithron na ninui, na the ovras a hared, a hagened, no alwed I laerli.
This is where my geekness comes out. You know, I love that stuff. I wish I could speak Elvish. Where are we going here? Okay. So niche audiences. And then, of course, activating your advocate. And this is probably one of the biggest things that we really talked about this conference. That would be sort of the thing that has risen to the top, is to really get people talking so that they can do the marketing for you. And, you know, we illustrate this with this little chart here, where we say, well, you know, when it comes to the volume of conversation about your destination these days, you know, this is the stuff that you do in your advertising. And that's what everybody else does. You know, all your consumers, all the advocates, your residents, those are all the stories that are out there about your destination. So the volume that you can put out there never matches the volume of conversation that, you know, just people, your visitors, your influencers, your advocates, your residents are putting out there. That's why it's so important to focus on that. And unless you are Tourism Australia with a $250 million budget, you know, there's no way that you can outspend the competition, or that you can outspend the stories that are out there from people. So again, it would be smarter to just use that budget and make sure that the stories that people generate are better and more of them. And it all comes down to word of mouth. So the question is, are you down with OPC, other people's content? And I almost wanted to put the music in, because I'm from the 80s, you know. You down with OPP? So use fans to create content, engage ambassadors, you know, they're your best friends, you know, these are the people that you want to connect with. So there's a few steps that we take in order to do this, because you can just say, oh, ambassadors, but that's a pretty broad term. Or you can just say, oh, our visitors, but that's one group. There's actually a whole different range of groups that you can engage, and that's important to identify. So again, from Iceland in Europe earlier, they have identified who are our storytellers, you know, because it's all about stories. So Iceland says, well, who are the ones that can tell the Iceland story? And they identified them. When we were in Australia, SoMeT, Queensland showed their video strategy. And again, they said, okay, well, who are the video content creators? And they identified the different groups of people. Dan talked about this as well, you know, who is telling my story? Who are the ones that are creating the story that I can then amplify? One of the groups that you can use are passionate communities. Just like, you know, people who are really, really passionate about Lord of the Rings. You know, the KLM had a great story about airplane geeks. And I wish I would have known that this was happening, because I'd only learned about it, you know, when he spoke about it, because I'm one of those idiots that probably would have gone down and flown the last flight, even though I don't really care, and then write my name on it. That's just stuff that appeals to me, okay? So that's a passionate community. So if you have a particular product or experience in your destination, see if there is a community that are really, really passionate about it. Whether it's, you know, music here, right? So there's people that will probably travel halfway around the world to go to Nashville. We're always talking about feeder markets and the big city that's next door. And of course, that's important, because that's where volume comes from. But also think about it in passions. What would people travel halfway around the world for, or drive hours for, in order to get to my destination? Because there can be a cascading effect. because those are the people that will come back and rave about you. Those are the people that will write the right stories in social media, and they might influence the casual fans. I'm not an airplane geek, but you know, through all this hoopla, I might have gone, hey, that's kind of interesting. Of course, you use fog whenever you can. You know, get fog to take over your Facebook page, and fog is a huge influencer. Now, it's a good example of how you pick, you know, somebody that can tell your destination story. The fog is a big part of San Francisco, and Dan and his organization, I think they did a great job embracing that and using, you know, this something that's quite quirky but quite popular. Of course, influencers. You know, last year at SoMeT, we had a panel about influencers. Michaela did a great presentation about influencers. And they can be really, really important as well, especially if you're talking to niche influencers who are speaking to an audience that's really, really relevant. And of course, your visitors. And that was really the story that we heard a few times at the conference. Leah with Explore BC, a great campaign, what they're doing over there. And you know, I think one of the things that stood out was it doesn't matter if somebody has 1 million or 30 followers or friends, because the regular person is probably way more influential to their 30 friends than an influencer is to their 1 million followers. Encouraging people to share more. Jory from that talked yesterday from Cypress Hills, he's using photos as a marketing tool. He sells them, but if people don't buy them, he just gives it to them because he knows if I give people good photos, they will share them, and that's good marketing. So he's enabling them to share those photos, and then he encourages his staff to create awesome photos because he gives them a cut of the people that buy them, so that the photos will be better, so that more people will buy them and more marketing is out there for him. When I was in Australia, I went skydiving, and the outfit, the guy that was strapped onto me, he had a GoPro on his arm, and it would take photos every few minutes, or every few seconds, and then they would give me the photos after, and of course, all over social. Had the little logo on it. It's perfect marketing. Right, System 1, System 2. What do we do with System 1, System 2 again? This is a long time ago, isn't it? But it was something about emotion, but okay, what do we do with it again? Lauren helps me. What do we need to do with System 1, needed 2? Operation Jumbo Drop, right, that's what it was that we needed to do. Actually, no, like that whole presentation I thought was really, really insightful, because as marketers, we often think things are too rational. Then people go here, and then they click on my website, and then they explore the whole thing. And then they make up their decision, and then they go somewhere and buy it. There's great TripAdvisor research that shows that people who are researching a hotel in one destination will actually easily switch to a competing destination based on some ads on TripAdvisor. That's how irrational people are, because we think, well, they selected it based on us, and then they went there. And it also shows that if you don't differentiate your destination well enough, you know, if you're a beach is a beach. You could go to a beach in a whole bunch of places, and if the price is better at a beach that I think is exactly the same as somewhere else, I'll happily go there. But if you're Music City, then it's different. But it also shows that, you know, we're a group animal, and, you know, people just follow each other, just like Crocs. At one point, we were all walking around in Crocs. Nobody really was sure why. It was a bad idea, but one person started it, and next thing you know, everybody was doing it. And I'm happy that it's over. But it also reminded me of the one time I went to Paris, and, you know, we were at a dinner party a week before we went, and we're talking to somebody, we're like, yeah, we're going to Paris. And this stranger says, oh, I was there just 2 weeks ago, and I went to this amazing restaurant, this by the Opera House. You go into this little area, and it's called Le Bleu, Le Bleu, Bleu. And there's probably 5,000 restaurants in Paris. But me and my wife, we went on the subway, and then we changed subways, and we went to another, then we went to the Opera House, and we find a little restaurant, and that's where we had dinner. because a random stranger at a dinner party said, that's where you need to go. That's how it works. And that's why word of mouth is so incredibly powerful. Okay, 5, marketing with social at the core. This is the term that we use when we think about marketing, because what most of our clients and what most destinations do is they put traditional at the core, and then they go to the social media department or the social media agency and says, oh, this is what we're doing. We're having this campaign. Can you now do some social stuff with it? Or can you now, what's the right word? Amplify it. Or can you now, broadcast this, tell everybody about it? What we say is, no, flip it around. Put social at the core, because if you start with something that's social, if you start with something that people will talk about, then you already have something that is organic, that is conversational. Now you can use your digital channels and even traditional channels, if appropriate, if you have the budget, to sort of extend that message even further. So flipping it around and putting social at the core, and we saw some great examples of it. Great content is a conversion machine. That's what Philadelphia said, and I think that's right. Social content, can drive web traffic. It can, inspire people. It can help people plan. All these kind of things. And instead of just focusing on reach, I think, we all agree now, reach is okay, reach is important, but really what matters is engagement. Just like on a website, web traffic doesn't matter. What matters is, how long do they stay, how many pages do they look at? Reach doesn't matter on Facebook. What matters is the engagement. So Dan has some good examples, putting social at the core. Just ask your people, what are you looking for? And Dan from the Poconos, they have an awesome campaign. It was a great case study. Similar idea as Explore BC if you missed it. Encouraging people to share more content about the Pocono Mountains. And then he used the Instagram photos in a range of advertising vehicles, including TV commercials, billboards. Of course, he asked everybody for permission, just so we're clear. But really amplifying that message. Instead of, and he even said it, why would I hire an expensive photographer if I get awesome content from my visitors? It's way more effective and way more authentic. Look at Lauren again. Find stories, don't create them. Customer service in social media. KLM, is one of the world leaders in this, especially in travel. We've heard some great stories from him, but that's what we need to do as well as a DMO. We need to think about what do we do to manage the story on the ground. We've done our service design, we've worked with our industry, but what happens if somebody has a complaint, if somebody has a negative experience? What are we going to do about it? And a lot of our clients, we have clients that have closed down their visitor center, and they're now purely servicing visitors through social, through Twitter, through Instagram, through Facebook, and we're even working with larger DMOs, like statewide DMOs, to sort of help them understand what kind of processes and networks can we put in place in order to service our visitor, on that scale. How can we scale this up by using our network? Lesson 6, create an integrated channel strategy. I like this one from Jochem as well. Who cares what kind of channels are important today are not necessarily the channels that are important tomorrow. That's why we always say, focus on the channels last. Put your strategy in place, know your audience, know your story, and then, what are the right channels for you? And, so there was a bunch of really good conversation. 3 people out of 250 thought that Facebook would still be dominant in 5 years. I was actually one of them, because, 5 years, it seems, but they could easily make a mistake, and where are we all going to go? Google Plus? Instagram? That's Facebook too. And then there was and then there's the ongoing conversation about, because it's so fragile, should we really be building on, rented space, like Facebook? Is that really a smart thing to do or not? Or should we use it to drive web traffic, because that's at least something that you own? But then there was another conversation that Dave brought up, and that was all about, why go to a DMO website? And he, let's do this right here. How many of you use DMO websites when you plan your trip? About 33%. So the point is, are DMO websites even going to be relevant in 5 years? Or are they going to be relevant the way they are today? So there's a lot of different questions out there. And I think the answer is, I expected another slide, but this is probably my favorite slide from the whole conference. This is my channel integration slide. Thank you for this, Brian. We're going to be using this. Everybody, I think, is going to be using this. This is about integration. Don't look at your channels in isolation. Just like Brian pointed out here so eloquently, that a marketer, they just jump on what's new and hot, and they leave the old girlfriend sitting on the couch. Why don't we integrate our channels and see how we can all work together? But this is the one that I expected. What channel should you use and when? It depends. It depends on your unique situation. And this is Kieran's approach at Ireland. It doesn't mean that it's appropriate for you, because it depends on, for example, it depends on where's your challenge in the funnel. Is your challenge earlier? For example, well, everybody knows about me, but we're one of those destinations where everybody says, yeah, one day we'll go, but not right now. That's a different challenge as, well, people always say, yeah, I was gonna go, but, we didn't have the right information, it was too expensive, it was hard to get to. That's a different challenge, and that requires a different strategy. Facebook is really good at keeping you top of mind. Through your page, people continuously see stuff about you. So that's, a little bit earlier in the funnel. If people don't even know about you or have the wrong perceptions, well, maybe you need to work with influencers, so that you get a little bit more reach. So it really depends on your unique situation, what's appropriate. And then my last point is that you need to lead. See, this is one of my last one. Okay, right. Everyone in the DMO needs to be so. This came from Heidi. This came from the last presentation. I think that's really, really true. And a lot of the obstacles, we've even heard some questions about, yeah, I know that reach is not important, but how do I convince everybody else in the organization? And a lot of that is culturally. And it's so important, what I said earlier, to benchmark and create a roadmap so that you can slowly but surely move your organization from being traditional, and you just move things over until the scale tips and everybody is social, and the ones that aren't, they'll follow you kicking and screaming. So leading your industry partners. This is what we heard from from an award-winning operator in Canada, right? This is what they expect from the DMO. You need to pay attention, you need to show some love, and you need to tell them what they need. So you need to be the leader, you need to be the educator, you need to tell your industry, this is who we are, this is our story, this is how you can fit in, and this is what I need you to do on the ground in order to help tell that story, and this is what you can do online in order to support that. And here's a program that we have for you that you can achieve that. Even if that requires, moving some marketing dollars over to things like that. So a culture of cooperation with industry to be successful. And then, of course, like I said, staff as well. If you don't have the right people, you'll never get it done. So investing in staff, investing in training, skills, education, very, very important as well. But it will take time. Like Jim said, fantastic presentation, Jim. That was that was really awesome. I'm like looking forward to see what's going to be on the balloon next year. So just to summarize, be strategic, measure, learn, and adjust, create your brand story, deliver a remarkable experience, activate your advocates, marketing with social at the core, create an integrated channel strategy, and you really, really need to lead. Now, just to put it all together, this is something that we created over the last months, and that we just released this week, and this is sort of our strategic model of how we see working with the DMO and the things that a DMO needs to be doing, and you can find it on our website. But it's really, it's all about stories for a DMO. Destination marketing, it's all about storytellers. That's why it sits in the middle. And then it's a matter of looking at your experiences, managing the destination story through the experiences, and match them up with the right audiences, the niche audiences. Develop your destination story, find the right audiences, and then look for the right storytellers who can tell those stories through their own channels or amplified through your own channels. That's how it all fits together. Now, if you look at it top down, so you have an experience that turns into a storyteller turns it into a story and then tells that story through the channel to reach an audience, that's destination marketing. You can be the storyteller as a DMO. A traditional piece of advertising is a story. If you sort of look at the full, at a billboard, it kind of tells a story, even if it's one photo. In that case, the DMO is the storyteller. You take one of your experiences, you make it a story, and you tell it through a traditional channel. But it could also be a TripAdvisor review, a Facebook post, an Instagram photo, a blog, all these things. So that's destination marketing. If you look at it the other way around, it's destination development. If you sort of look at, okay, what's my target audience? What are the stories that they're telling and where? And who's telling these stories? And what are they actually saying? And what can we do to improve the destination experience? And that's service design. So you can learn more about this on our website, on our blog, and over the next months, every week, we're going to explain in a little more depth what this model really means for each of these sections. Now, I'm talking about benchmarking, and we're also using this model in our benchmarking. So for each section, when we create a report for each section, we have a variety of activities that a DMO should be doing, but we have on a scale from 1 to 5, you know, and then we rate it, and then we say, okay, well, this is where this particular DMO is. So you get something like this, and then we sit down when we created the strategic plan, and you can do this internally. You can say, well, you know, here we're only a level 1, so maybe next year we're going to try to be here. We're doing pretty good here, so let's leave it that way. And it doesn't always have to be marketing. It could be your meetings and conventions. It could be the way you work with industry. It could be your brands. It could be your channels. It could be all kinds of things. But it allows you to look really strategically over multiple years. Where are we? Where do we want to go? And specifically, what do we need to do to get there? That's what I'm going to finish with. That's what I'm going to wrap it up with. The only difference between try and triumph is a little oomph. Thank you very much, everybody.